The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello again. This is Legislative Update with my co-host, Erica Layon. And so before we get into the legislative stuff, I want to go over a little bit, spend a couple minutes on the Pfoa Agreement with the Department of Environmental Services, DES. Now remember, more than a year and a half ago, I put in a bill to force anybody that pollutes the water to hook you up to water. If they can't hook you up, to put in a whole house water filter, and then pay for your water bill, which you haven't paid for. Unfortunately, the Senate killed that bill. That's why my favorite saying is, if good bills go to the Senate to die. But anyway, but DES came up with most of what we want. So I posted this on the Litchfield Facebook, but just to let you know, so those that don't do that, you can watch it. So in the red there, New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, represented by the Attorney General, St. Gobain, announced an agreement to permanently provide safe drinking water to approximately 1,000 properties in Bedford, Hudson, Litchfield, Londonderry, and Merrimack. Now, what they're going to do is, I don't know where they get the POET from, because at the point of use treatment system or water line connection to over 500 properties, primarily in Litchfield and Merrimack. So if they can't hook you up to a water line, they put a whole house filter on, and which they'll have to maintain. So, which is probably, those that have to have that done is probably like it better, because they don't have to pay the damn Pennachuck water bill. Whoops, my language. But anyway, and mainly on Litchfield Hillcrest Road area, there'll be 77 properties will make a water line connection, and some others they'll have to do a whole house filter. So just wanted to update you on that. I'm on the Pfoa Commission, and for some reason I argued with the senator, why'd you kill it? Well, we didn't know it was legal. No, you do it, then you let people take it to court. Come on. And we had other senators say the same thing on other bills. So, no, we'll pass it, then see what happens. But some senators, the problem with the Senate is there's only 24 of them, and there's 400 of us. And they listen to lobbyists more than we do. Because in some cases, the lobbyists are paying their campaign. So anyway.
And the lobbyists show up to their hearings a lot more, too.
A lot more than us, because I know a lobbyist I've known for years, ever since I've been there, and she'd been there. So I was just joking with her about, we don't listen to lobbyists. She said, yeah, I know. But I mean, but the Senate does, and I'm going, come on, you know who they work for? Anyway, so just wanted to fill you in on that. Also, I was going to show you, we have what's called Tauton Day, and we haven't had one in a few years. That's where we have. I was going to show you that, but the music was terrible because the microphones weren't placed right. But anyway, where bagpipers come in and they have dancers, and there was a small one this year, and usually it goes down the aisle and everything, but hopefully maybe next year. So we had a busy 2 weeks. I had to fill in on election law 2 Fridays ago, which was good because we're going to over a couple of those bills. HHS 2 Tuesdays ago, and Erica's committee, 11.5-hour day, and we don't get overtime.
No. The janitor did. He got overtime, so he asked us to go slower.
Right, yeah. But we started at 9 and we left at 8:30. I mean, yeah. Then I also did my normal education committee for a few days. But anyway, back to legislative update. Yesterday we voted on Senate bills going on to a second committee. So first on a couple of things, and with Erica, SB 229, HHS requirement for pharmacists and technicians giving vaccines. Now this was on the consent calendar, and what that means is you vote for all the bills with one vote. So these are usually bills that come out, nobody voted against, or 2 or 3 people voted against, but it's gone being sent. So, want to fill us in on that one?
So we actually did some of our bills that aren't early committees on our first time because we were saving up all of the big bills for the day you were going to join us.
Right.
So this bill, it takes some of the things we did during COVID, which was allowing pharmacy technicians to give vaccines. And we took some of the things that had gone into their rules and put them in for everybody who's giving vaccines. So it expands for pharmacists, pharmacy interns, licensed advanced pharmacy technicians who are all already covered, and now the certified pharmacy technicians that we did during COVID. It requires their training to include hands-on injection technique and the recognition and treatment of emergency reaction to vaccinations. It requires them to have a basic CPR certificate. And it requires them to review data on previous vaccinations, whether it's in the registry or other records, before giving the vaccination, so you're not accidentally doubling up for anybody. So this is actually fantastic because these are people who are already getting that training. And when you look at flu season and all of these other ones, it makes sense to have a few more people who are available to do this and that we have more training for everybody. So this one, it was amended, so the Senate will need to concur. But I believe they came in and spoke with us, so I have a pretty good feeling this will be headed to the governor soon.
Right. Good. And also, Transportation Committee on the consent calendar, SB 417, electric school bus pilot program using federal funds. So you might see that coming sometime, which I think that's a good plot for electric vehicles. Because the school buses pretty much stay in your town. If something happens, the batteries are run dead, it's not that big of a deal as compared to if I'm in the middle of a snowstorm and I'm parked on the highway and I can't go anywhere for days. I'm sort of, they can't just give me a gallon of gas to get to the nearest gas station. They have to tow you. So anyway, so I think that's a good thing if they can be interesting where they want to start that. Hey, why'd you do it in Litchfield? But anyway, then, okay, now let's move to the regular calendar. And there was a contentious one, SB 458. This was wait a minute, was that no, that was criminal justice, I'm sorry. No, wait a minute, what was it? Children and Family Law, right, I'm sorry. Relative to, basically, the whole thing was to close, they want to close the Sununu Youth Service Center, which is like the old days of a jail for kids type thing, and there's been a lot of argument, a lot of cases with abuse and that kind of thing. It was built for, I remember when it was built, for I think it was 140 people, and now there's only like 15 in there now. So one of the things that was looking at, if it's not a violent crime, in other words, if teenagers break into your house and wreck it and steal everything, but they don't hurt anybody, that's they're not going to go to jail for that. It used to be after 3 times they did, but now they don't go to jail. So look what happened in California a couple of years, or a year ago, with the smash and break, break in and smash stuff and steal it, and the kid doing it. And they were hired by the mob and whatnot, or adults to do that. The kids weren't going to jail. We have a retired Supreme Court justice in the legislature, and he even testified, this doesn't work, this isn't good. So anyway, unfortunately, his amendment didn't pass. So we'll see how this happens. We're only the second state, Illinois, in the union with this. So hopefully we'll see what happens with the governor. So SB 306, another one, criminal justice. What that does is, and could be a bigger fine if you're driving and texting and then getting in an accident. So that could cause some problems. And we'll see what happens. SB 381, education, establishing an Office of Advocate of Special Education. Now, we've had these problems before where you have a special ed child and the school says, oh, we can't do this, we can only do this and whatnot. And now you can go to the New Hampshire DOE and make your case. But now we're having an office of special education, so an advocate. Now they're the regular child advocate, but that's in DHHS. So, but the problem with that, it'll be not in the same office, but close, because the child advocate normally that deals with abuse cases and those things and finding homes and whatnot. Not really for special education. And so this establishes an office of that. So hopefully, if you have a child that needs special ed and your school district is fighting you and whatnot, because I remember a couple of years ago, a friend of mine came up to me at the polls and said, I don't know what to do. I tried to this for special needs, and I went to the then U.S. Senator, and she said, talk to me. But I said, no, you get to go through, and I'll send it to you, the DOE, New Hampshire DOE, and they'll work it with you, which they did in that case. And she got her bills paid and everything. So now a good one, which I sat in on election law. I'm sorry, I tried to turn that off.
Real life never stops.
No, when you want to. When you want to shut it off, it won't. Anyway, so SB 418. I don't know if you've heard about it, but let's find it here and bring it up. And luckily that was the day I was sitting in on election law, so I know about it. It's the Voter Affidavit. So in other words, if you vote and you don't have an ID, normally you just sign an affidavit that, yeah, I'm so-and-so and I live at so-and-so, and you voted. The problem is, and over the years, a lot of those people don't exist. So what this does is, and people always complain, there's no fraud. No, yeah, how can you prove the fraud if you can't find the person that said, oh yeah, I'm so-and-so and I live here, and they don't. You can't find them, they don't exist. So anyway, I remember when I was the first time I was up there at the State House and elected rep, I was in 05, 06, and I was on election law then. And I remember some town clerk came in and said what she did was send postcards to all those addresses that people said they didn't have an ID and whatnot. Half of them came back, no such person. So there is fraud. Don't let anybody tell you there isn't. The problem is now what this does is in New Hampshire, it was interpreted, the Constitution some years ago, that all the votes have to be counted that day. So we couldn't go with what other states have with provisional ballots. But this is, people are calling it that. It's not a provisional ballot. It's provisional to the point of you can vote, but your vote is marked with a number, okay? And it's a different color. So you can vote and the vote is counted. You then have 7 days to prove who you were. If you don't in 7 days, then the Secretary of State will tell the town clerk or the moderator, pull this numbered ballot. Then that's subtracted from the total count. Now people say, well, then the privacy isn't there for how the people voted. They shouldn't have voted anyway. It's not a certified ballot. So sorry, but I think this will work out good. There might be less cases of people showing up in buses, which in some places they do, and not having any ID. Who doesn't have an ID? You can't do anything in this state without an ID. You can't cash a check. You can't go anywhere without an ID. So, I mean, that's it. Yeah, if you forget it, fine, you can still vote, but then prove who you were within 7 days. So now let's go over to HHS. Erica, what have we got?
Oh, we had a fun time with Hhs Bills.
I know, and I was with you.
I know. Thank you for being with us. We had a number of different ones, but I think probably the two most interesting are 430, which came over to us. That had 74 parts when it showed up.
Yeah.
And we trimmed it down to 65 because there were a few things that needed to go to Children and Family Law. there was a whole new set of definitions for childcare facilities. And I don't know child and family law. I don't know. We didn't know how to determine if it was right, and it needed its own hearing. So we removed that. And there were a couple other things like that we removed. We actually did add some good things as well. It's come to our attention that if you're involved in any case that alleges child abuse, if you speak about it, it's a misdemeanor. So we have a change to make it a violation. So that means that if there's somebody who sees something like what was happening with Harmony Montgomery, that they could share if DCYF wasn't responding, or if there was something else going on, they could be a bit of a whistleblower without risking a misdemeanor. And then if there's really overly aggressive action happening from the department, then somebody can also talk about that. And then a parent would be able to share stuff about their child's case as long as they remove their child's name. So sunlight's always the best disinfectant. So that's a great thing that was added in there. It moves on to finance. I still can't believe we worked on a bill that's as big as HB2, which is the thing that goes along and makes the budget work.
Yeah,
and we got that done in an afternoon by cutting out all the things that just needed more time and needed more attention.
Yeah.
You know, with 65 parts, you'd think that we couldn't pay attention to it, but there were, I think, 15 where it removed the name of a facility that doesn't exist anymore. So a lot of it was just that basic housekeeping. Yeah. And there was a pilot program for developmentally disabled. They're not kids anymore when they're over 18, but before they're 21. So a lot of really, really good stuff that we need to do that sort of all got put together.
Yeah, the thing with that, I mean, the Senate keeps complaining because we send them all these bills. But then and last year we really complained because they were sending us what they called omnibus bills. They took 10 of their bills, stuck it in one bill, and sent it to us. And it was the same type of thing. No, that's not really our committee. That should be in this committee. And they promised they wouldn't do that again. Mm-hmm. But here, this was similar. They took everything DHS wanted and stuck it in one bill when it should have been in multiple bills. And so I told our speaker, I said, next time they complain about us, hit them with this one.
And it was all DHHS, so in the Senate it was all one committee. But we have more committees so we can split things up more. So it just wasn't a good translation.
Right.
So we have another bill, House Bill 459, and that's on healthcare facility workplace violence programs.
Yes.
So it does a couple different things. The hospitals and ambulatory surgery centers, basically not a hospital, but they cut you. It's a really, really important part of the healthcare system. But they had identified this problem that was happening. And they decided that hospitals and urgent cares really needed to have a group of 50 people to come together and discuss what was happening with workplace violence. They decided that in order to address violence, they needed to increase the definition of workplace violence to basically hurt feelings, which really concerns me, because if we're going to focus on workplace violence, let's first take care of actual violence with injury first, and then figure out how to deal with the rest, because they're different animals there.
Yeah, wasn't there a problem with this? It was for everything more than just medical, so we had to fix that?
So that was a whole separate part. So this is some of the part about the first couple sections. And so if you're a really big hospital, you're already following accreditation things so that you can get paid that have these rules. So if you're following those, you're good. And otherwise, this commission's going to make rules for the smaller ones. But the really, really, really bad thing that I took to the floor was there was an increase of warrantless arrest powers. So what it did, I have the language right here. So right now there's a couple places in the law where a police officer can make an arrest without getting a warrant. And this added, while in the care of a medical professional on the premises of a residential care or healthcare facility, which you define in law, through actual or threatened violence, interfere in the provision of medically necessary healthcare services. There's a couple problems there. Does that violence mean the same one as hurt feelings that's in the same law? And if it does, are you going to arrest somebody without a warrant because they hurt somebody's feelings? It wasn't clear. And then the other part is that medically necessary healthcare services aren't defined anywhere. So you'd be going to the dictionary to decide whether or not you could arrest somebody without a warrant. And those are two really big problems. And the biggest one is warrantless arrests really put a lot of faith into the system. They really count on a huge amount of faith that it's not going to be abused. And this bill only went to Health and Human Services and Finance. It didn't go to criminal justice. It didn't go to judiciary. If it ends up making sense that we need to expand this, it needs to go to those committees. So we had an amendment. A really brave Democrat co-sponsored it with me, and I really thank her for that. And unfortunately, she was the only one in her party that voted with us. She was the only one, and I'm still trying to figure out how the party that at least nationally talks about defunding the police are the ones who fought to expand warrantless arrests in our hospitals, to make it so those protections aren't there once you walk in. I'm so glad we were able to pull this out, because I don't know if we would have had our New Hampshire George Floyd moment in one of our hospitals if we didn't get rid of this. And I'm so glad that we don't have that on our conscience.
Right.
So now it's off to finance, and they can try and figure out those other parts. Sorry, I'm passionate about that, Bill.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, that was, yeah, I meant the arguments on that. Yeah, it was just yesterday, by the way. But I mean, yeah, I remember even in committee we had that argument too on it when we were there, which was nice. I was there for 11 and a half hours. Okay, now we go to Special Committee on Redistricting. So we did we still have a problem with, we still don't have congressional districts defined yet. Thank you, Governor. Anyway, so the people running for Congress have no idea what towns they're going to be in. So anyway, but the Senate did the redistricting of state Senate districts. Unfortunately, ours didn't change. We are still, Litchfield is left out in the cold without any viable Senate representation. We are again in a Senate district with 5 Manchester wards. No state senator, regardless of party, not being nonpartisan about it, can represent Litchfield while also representing Manchester. I mean, that's common sense, but the Goffstown had that same problem, but they moved Goffstown out. They're not with Manchester anymore. But the problem is, I remember in 2007, I think it was with the money for school. Manchester got 35 million more. Litchfield lost 2 million. Now that sounds like a big difference, but if you look at the tax rate, that's the same amount. 35 million in Manchester is like $2 on the tax rate, and the 2 million in Litchfield is $2 on the tax rate. Unfortunately, we were losing that. Manchester was gaining. So how could any senator represent Litchfield in that case? And there's other cases too. We're a small little town, and Manchester, yeah, even though those wards in Manchester are about the same size as Litchfield, but it's part of the city. 5 wards in Manchester, and it's really not fair. So anyway, also, so again, we're, don't matter who you vote for, they can't represent us. But also, SB 241, that's the redistricting of executive council districts, where there's 5 executive councils. Ours didn't change. We're still in with the last Senate, executive council 5. They were all, again, with all the other towns west of us, Merrimack, Amherst, all those. So that comes out okay. Okay, so, but the problem is the state Senate district is again, like I said, we still don't have any word on what's coming up on congressional districts. And just think of that. In about 5 weeks, we start filing for office. So that means the congressional districts too. This was all worked out in January and February. What gets me is the Senate. We had ours done in January and passed it to the Senate. And I don't know why the Senate didn't have the same thing. And then on congressional districts, it was all worked out. And then at the last minute, the governor said, no, I'm not signing that. So now they're still fooling with the congressional districts. So, again, we don't know. I remember in 2002, when I was first going to run, which I did first run, they couldn't come up with state rep districts areas. So the governor vetoed the plan, and it went to and couldn't come up with anything that the governor agreed with. So it went to the Supreme Court. They hired somebody from North Carolina or South Carolina to do it. If those who remember that, remember when we had the 13, don't vote for no more than 13, because the person in the court doing those didn't like the word floterial. So had to make it so each district had an even number and they make the town. So we were initially with Litchfield and Merrimack, but that really was ridiculous. You got to go through 2 other towns or a city to get to Merrimack. There's no bridge unless you have a rowboat. But then they put us with Hudson, Pelham, and Litchfield, which made more sense, but still, that was 13 reps. And for those 10 years, Litchfield did not have any representation. And if those remember 2007-8, when we lost that $2 million, we didn't have any representation. So we didn't have anybody voting for us for that to start with. So hopefully, but again, with the state rep districts, that's set, like I had said, we have Litchfield, we're not with Manchester anymore for the floterials. And the floterial thing is at large. We still have our 2 reps, like myself and Rich LaSalle, and 2 Manchester reps that are from wards 8 and 9 in Manchester, which 8 borders us, 9 is the ward up. Yeah, so we have now it's two floterials with Hudson, which makes better sense. So Hudson's got to have, Pelham now is going to have 4 of their own reps. Litchfield 2 reps. Hudson 2 reps and 2 floterials with Hudson. So there's 10 total, which comes out perfect. So anyway, I think that's sort of it. You have anything?
Huge changes for Derry. They're still in the same Senate district. That's
Yeah,
still the
yeah, I know
same
that.
3. Still in the same US one, and it's still our 10 reps. So for us, it didn't make much of
I
a
know it,
change,
yeah.
but I'm glad that for other towns and cities, it was able to
Yeah.
mostly be better.
Yeah. We're still up in the air on the congressional district. You might still be in one, but
I haven't seen a map where
I
Derry's
haven't
not
seen
in
one either.
one,
I
but the
know.
day is young.
and we don't know what we're going to be in. 1, 2. I mean, I've been campaigning for 1 and 1, but I also for 1 and 2 too, so I'm covered. But so anyway, hopefully, so we're going to be meeting again
On the 4th and 5th.
4th and 5th to go over most of the other bills. We just got the Senate bills, and then we concur or not concur, and then so we'll have another meeting then. So hopefully, see you in a couple, and then hopefully what we'll do after that is just go over what's passed, what the governor signed. So anyway, have fun. Thank you, Erica, again.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back with you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.